My name is Mick Prue. I wanted to step through just a quick 10-minute whiteboard session that kind of describes the Dell EMC VMware cloud strategy. In order to start, what I like to do is I like to talk about typically why customers go to the cloud. So if I think about cloud, customers generally go there because it's easy, right? I go to a portal, I click on a button, and very quickly I get access to either the service or the resources that I'm looking for. So it's easy and it's fast. It's also simple. And I know simple sounds a lot like easy. But when I say simple, it's simple because I don't have to worry about what infrastructure is behind it that's going to provide those resources or those services, right? I just click on it and I really have no regard for what's happening underneath. So it's easy, it's fast, and it's simple. Cloud gets to check all of those boxes, right? Now, when we think about our friends in IT, typically when they look at this, they're typically not viewed as fast and easy, right? And some might argue it's because they're not simple either, right? There's a very complicated infrastructure underneath it. There are a lot of decisions that need to be made. There's a lot of compliance that has to be adhered to. Typically, those are all very manual functions, right? I have to think about what server I'm going to have, what network I'm going to have, what compute I'm going to have, what storage I'm going to have, what tools I'm going to use to manage it, et cetera, et cetera. So as a result, IT is generally viewed as not cloud-like, right? So the last component is financial. And I'm actually going to give both sides a question mark here because it really is dependent on the customer. There's two conversations we can have here. One is an OpEx model versus a CapEx model, right? OpEx versus typically CapEx. The other conversation we can have is expensive or cheap. You know, we can talk about whether cloud is expensive or cheap. I think we all have customers where it's actually proved to be a lot more expensive, but because it's so fast, easy, and simple, they view a lot of value in that, so they don't worry about it. From the IT side, generally a capital expenditure, and generally they don't have a whole lot of visibility as far as what the costs are associated with that specific workload or that specific service. So I'll give it a question mark. Now, why are customers looking to cloud anyway? Well, they're looking for all these reasons, but IDC tells us that 93% of all of our customers are going to actually deploy to 2 or more clouds, right? So 93% say, I'm going to have a multi-cloud type of environment. And really, 92% say one of those clouds is going to be on-prem. So I'm going to have an on-prem requirement. Interestingly enough, they say all those things, and 87% of them say that they want a consistent operating environment, right? So how can we meet all those customer objectives? I'll tell you what typically happens. What typically happens is a customer starts to look at the application owners, which is the right way to look, right? So they'll look at application owners, and they'll also look at application development groups, right? So they say, okay, I'd like a way that I can kind of support both of those business units. In traditional application owners, we have a traditional model there, right? We might allocate virtual machines, give them some variables so that they can get the right resources for the workload that they want to, or the application that they want to deploy. And then for the app dev folks, we want a more cloud native environment. So if those are our users and we want it to be more cloud-like, lots of times what a customer will do is they'll say, okay, I need to make it easy for them to consume my resources. So what they'll do is they'll create a self-service portal. Right. So now what I've done is I've given my application owners and my application development folks a place to go that's going to be easy and potentially will be fast. We can talk about that a little bit later. So what they do is they set up this self-service portal and they say, okay, mission accomplished. I've got my cloud operating model. Right? Because they're really looking at from the infrastructure up, and they want to be easier to do business with, so they look from the infrastructure up. Well, what actually happens is underneath that, a lot of things have to happen. So if you think about it, they have a few things that need to happen. They need to find resources. So they're going to have compute, they're going to have network, they're going to have storage, right? They've got these physical resources that they're going to have in their environment. And then they need to provide them in a kind of an abstracted way. A majority of our customers take a look at that and they say, okay, I need a layer of abstraction between that hardware and the people that are requesting it. Because the best way for me to automate the provisioning of those resources is to abstract it. So I'm actually going to abstract my compute, my storage, and my network. And then I'm going to put some automation, right? I'm going to put some automation, I'm going to put some orchestration in here, and then I'm going to put some operations in here, right? So now I'm to the point where I've created this environment where my application owners and application development folks have a fast and easy way to request resources, but I don't necessarily have a simple environment here. I have to worry about who I select for a compute platform, what type of network I have, what type of storage I have. Are those all compatible with each other? Are the settings correct? Are the BIOS settings correct? Is the firmware at the right level? Do I have the right version of the driver running, et cetera, et cetera? It's a very manual process. And actually, these pieces can be manual as well, right? How do I keep the automation and the virtual infrastructure in sync as well? How do I make sure that I don't have a different version here that is supported by the underlying infrastructure? So the process here is very manual. I have to look at each one of these individually, but I have to take the whole thing into consideration. That generally requires quite a few resources in order to do that. And then if you have customers that want two or more clouds in their environment, well, now I've got other things that I have to consider. I've got compute, network, and storage, right, that I'm going to have out in a cloud somewhere, right? How do I have that fold into all this and still be simple, right? Not necessarily easy to do. Then I'm also going to have some edge requirements. So I'm going to have compute, network, and storage, but I'm going to have many of them, right? How do I manage those under this infrastructure? It's just made it more complex. It's going to be hard to be fast when you have to take into consideration, every possible endpoint for where the workloads could land. So then we can kind of start talking about, okay, I work for Dell Technologies. There are ways that I can help you with this environment. So initially what I would think is I say, okay, there's a way that I can automate to make sure that all the versions and all the BIOS settings and all the settings are correct here so that we bring stability into the environment and we make at least the hardware portion a little bit more simple. So if we look at VxRail, it helps us do that at the hardware level, right? We have very little control. This is already simple from a hardware perspective, right? There's somebody else that's managing that. So I don't really have to worry about that. So I've simplified my environment from a raw resource perspective. So then what do I do on the software-defined portion, right? We actually have the ability through VMware Cloud Foundation and SDDC Manager specifically, a way to keep all of that current as well. So I've now simplified the way I'm managing my hardware, and I've simplified the way that I'm managing my software, but there's still two different pieces that I have to look at independently. So what can I do there? Well, there's actually some additional functionality available with vCF that actually includes VxRail as well. So we have hooks now that make sure that all those settings and all the versions that are running on your VxRail are compatible with the current version of vSphere, NSX, vSAN, and even up into vRealize Automation, etc. So now what we've done is we've put a wrapper around this entire environment that allows you to check that simple box. I can check that simple box. And as a result, I've driven down my total cost of ownership by up to 47%. That's an IDC number. So now I've actually checked the financial as well, because I'm going to be less expensive. And oh, by the way, There are multiple ways that I can consume VxRail. Some are capital expenditures and some are operational expenditures. So it depends on what my financial requirements are. So I have flexibility around financial now. I can fit in the OPEX model, I can fit in the CAPEX model, and I'm less expensive because I've automated all the operations there. Fast and easy come along with the self-service portal, but the reason you become even more fast and even easier is because the resources that were used to manage this environment are now freed up to go have a more strategic relationship with the application owners and the application development folks. What that means is, I think it's like a number like 24% of customers feel like IT is aligned with the business, right? So we want to increase that number. IT wants to increase that number. So what can end up happening is they actually have a tighter relationship with the application owners and the application development folks, and they can be more responsive by actually building services that those folks need. Right? So now I've driven up my value as IT to the application owners. I've become more strategic to them, and I've become more consultative with them. And as a result, hopefully I drive that 24% number up a lot higher. And now IT is not viewed as competing with a cloud provider, but as embracing that cloud provider, be more collaborative, and making sure that the right workload belongs to the right on the right infrastructure. So this is something I think that most people can get their head around. It's a quick 10-minute whiteboard, and it kind of drives home the value of deploying vCF on top of Rail. Thank you.